Hello everybody, in this video we are going to continue solving a system, but this time we're going to use the matrix in our calculator. So there are various ways for us to be able to solve a system of equations. We've done one by graphing, we've used substitution and elimination. Well, matrix is just another way to find a solution to this system. So you can see that there are steps that we're going to be using because we're going to be using our calculator. And there's various buttons that we need to push. But before we can do that, we need to talk about... Hello everybody, in this video we are going to continue to solve systems of equations, but this time we're going to be using the matrix in our calculator. So we know that we can solve a system of equations by graphing, substitution, and elimination. But we're just going to add another one, which is the matrix, which will allow us to use our calculator to get the answer a little bit quicker. There are the steps on how to use the calculator and the matrix to get our answer. But before we do that, there's three main things that we're going to focus on this video. Number one is the setup. How can we make sure that our equations are set up and ready to be put into a matrix in the calculator? Number two, how to use the calculator to actually... So the first thing that I want to point out, our equations need to be in standard form. So standard form is when you have the x's, then the y, then the equal sign, and then the constant. In that order every single time. So because the system in our case has two equations, both of our equations have to be written in standard form. And if they're not, then we might have to rearrange it and put it in standard form for us to be able to use the matrix. And we're also not going to use any of our variables or our equal signs in the matrix. So with that being said, notice that the first example here, we have an x, a y, an equal sign, and then our constant. So the first one is in standard form because it's written in the correct order. Same thing with the second one. We have our x, we have our y, we have our equal sign, and then our constant. And there you go. So these are ready. Now, before we can put it into our matrix and into our calculator, I do want to point out that we only use the coefficients and the constants written in the same order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first equation and write it as -7, -8, +1. I'm going to take the second equation and do the same thing. We're going to say -14, +9, -23. So we take out the x's, the y's, and the equal signs. Now, we do need to make sure that if it's a positive number, it's just a number. But if it's a negative number, we still need to include the negative. We can't drop the negative because it changes the number itself. Now, as you can see, I have 2 rows of numbers, but I have 3 columns. And that's going to be important to us because you need to know what kind of matrix you're going to build. So this is 2 rows and 3 columns. Okay. So with that being said, I like to call the matrix that we actually put into our calculator the input matrix. And the matrix that you get back from your calculator, the one that has the answer, I call it the output matrix. So our matrix is going to look like this, and we're going to take those numbers in the same order with the same signs and organize them into our 2x3 matrix. And there you go. So this is the first setup. This one's the easiest one to do because both of our equations were in standard form. So let's look at the second equation. When we realize that the first one is in standard form because it has x, y, constant. But notice that we don't have an x for the second equation. We just have y. So what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to put a placeholder. Because I'm missing the x, the first number represents the x in this column. These are the x's. And since we don't have an x, I'm going to ask you to rewrite the second equation as 0x, because there are 0 x's in this problem, plus 1y, because the understood number attached to the y is 1, is equal to 4. So I'm asking you to rewrite the equation so we have an x, a y, and a constant. So with that being said, we're going to take the -5, the -2, and the 7. We're going to take the 0, the 1, and then the 4. So now that we have these numbers, I can now make my input matrix 2 rows, 3 columns. So my input matrix is going to be -5, -2, 7, 0, 1, and 4. So please make sure to look at your equations before you even begin setting up your matrices, because sometimes they have to be adjusted before you can start creating the matrix. All right, same thing with the last one. You're going to realize that the first equation, ready for the matrix, because we have x, y, equal sign, constant. This one is ready. But if you look at the second equation, we have y, then the equal sign, x, and then the constant. There's only one number that's out of place here. We have the x on the wrong side of the equation. So I'm going to ask you to take this -4x and move it to the other side. The only way we're going to get a -4x to the opposite side of the equal sign is to change the sign. So because this is a negative, let's go ahead and add 4x. Make sure you carry the x with it. And so our new equation is going to be 4x plus 1y is equal to, we still have this 23 right here. So our second equation looks like this. And now it is in standard form because we have an x, we have a y, we have a constant. So let's go ahead and create these numbers, 6, -6, -18. This one becomes 4. The y has the understood +1, and then 23. And so when we get ready to create the matrix, we take those numbers in that order and put them into a matrix. Now it might seem a little repetitive, and that's fine, but we can completely skip this step once we understand what the setup looks like. Okay? So we will end up skipping a step here and go from here to here, but we have to stop and look at our equations to make sure they're in standard form. The matrix will not work if you don't have both equations in standard form. So some of them will be ready and some of them require to be manipulated. So I'm actually going to stop right here because all we were going to talk about in this video is how to set up our equations for the matrix. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to actually take these input matrix and put them into our calculator to get an output matrix, which would be the solution. Then we'll talk about how to interpret that as well. So I'm going to pause right here. I hope that the 3 examples that we did together has helped you understand how to rewrite some of these equations in standard form. And I'll see you guys in the next video.